Roundhouse punch defense. This is when my opponent just throws a big, kind of sloppy, ugly, almost haymaker type punch. So the bigger the wind up and the bigger the swing, really the easier this is to defend, because he's broadcasting and giving me a lot of time to react here. Okay? If he just throws a good cross punch, that's very difficult to defend because he's not giving me all this space and time to close the gap. So I'll show the move and then we'll break it down and really discuss what makes for an effective punch defense. And it's probably not what you think it is. So he's gonna wind up, he's telling me which hand he's gonna punch. It's usually back. Maybe he's already got a fist. Okay, these are the things we're looking for in order to know what I'm doing. So if I see him make a fist, I see him load one arm back, I see an elbow come up or a fist come back, those are all great indicators. So anytime he does any of those, I'm going to close the gap, move into T position, set up my hip throw, complete my throw. Okay. So, the most important thing on a punch defense is closing the gap. Okay? It's kind of the, I don't know, more common belief, old school belief, maybe due to media, kung fu movies, whatever it wants to be, that we can just do this thing and block punches all day long. And that's really about the worst way to defend against a punch. Because if Josh throws a punch here, and let's say I do block it, he's still in this perfect distance to throw follow-up punches. There could be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or kicks. And so the most important thing with anything in jiu-jitsu, for the most part, especially self-defense, is closing the gap here. Okay? He's begun striking, I'm closing the gap. Okay? If he's not striking, I'm safer. If he just grabs me, okay, and he hasn't made any threats, this is great, okay? I know where his hand is. If he grabs me with two hands, this is fantastic because he's not hitting me. I know exactly where his hands are, okay? And so he's really mitigated his striking for me, okay? And it gives me a lot more time to diffuse the situation, to react, to think about what I have to do. If he just starts throwing punches, I don't have that much time. And so I've really got to be trained to react to that instantly. And it takes a while. So when we think about closing the gap, a lot of times people close the gap with the hips. And we always want to make sure we're closing the gap with the head. And what I mean by closing the gap with the hips is they'll do things like this. And they'll come in here. This is about where my hips are going to end up. But if you look, if I don't block this punch with the arm, it's going to follow through. And now I'm still in this distance where he can throw follow-up punches. So always close the gap with the head. And what I mean by that is this. He throws a punch, and I'm literally putting my forehead either into his chest, into his shoulder, into the bicep. I'm closing that space and ideally stuffing that punch before it even comes forward. So obviously you're not going to be able to always time these perfectly, especially if you're caught off guard. But anytime I can close that gap as he's winding up, that's ideal. I see his arm coming back, oh crap. I've got to move in here and close that space and get my head inside of the power arc here. If I get my head inside of the elbow, okay, true, he can hit me here, but it's not really going to do much. And yes, he can follow up with this arm, but I'm going to secure that as well, okay? And so by being inside of the elbow, it really takes away a lot of the power from those punches. So think of closing the gap as with your head, not with the foot, not with the hip, not with anything else, but the head. And if you're really doing this correctly, you should kind of crash into him with a little bit of force. And so I think a lot of people avoid closing the gap properly because it is a little violent. It will jerk your neck a little bit, but that's the way it needs to be done. So my hands ideally are up. Okay, maybe he catches me off guard, but either way, even if I close the gap without my hands up, as long as I close it with my head, I'm far better off than if I stay out here and have my hands up. Okay, so step one, whichever side he draws back with, I'm closing the gap with that foot and crashing into my opponent. My hands are ideally up. I like to cup the bicep and close the space and have this hand up really on this bicep as well. That way he can't follow up with that punch. So my head is in, I've stepped in nice and deep with this foot, and by cupping this arm, I can pull that into the T position, okay? So this arm is going to underhook. I'm going to step deeper into T position, and now I can pull on the tricep and pinch his wrist in the armpit on this side. So, right here. From a different angle here, he threatens. One. I've already got this tricep. I'm going to underhook this arm and just circle a little deeper, pulling the tricep, pinching. And you won't always get this perfectly, but even if we're on the wrist here, sometimes he draws back to punch and it slides down. I'll grab the wrist. You can grab over top here and pin that against his arm. And in a lot of ways, I really like this better than this, but it just depends on what he does with that arm. Okay. I don't prefer going inside this way, because if I lose the wrist and he winds up nice and big, you can lose that arm and he can follow through with that punch. So I always go over top. And we'll use this in other moves later, going over top. Okay. So either here or here. This hand is loosely going to go to the hip. Once I've set up T position and he's stopped resisting, if he just stays where he is, we go for the basic hip throw. I'm going to bring this shoulder in. This foot goes heel to toe right here. I'm going to sheet the booty through, and I'm going to lift. Okay? If I do this properly, he should just be resting on my hips here. And I'm just going to tuck this shoulder and arm. And I end up with the arm here for arm lock, strike, mount, whatever. Okay, so a couple more times through, maybe from a couple different positions here, different angles. Again, he threatens. My distance is going to be huge, right? He's got to be within striking distance. Roughly about 2 arm lengths. Any farther than this, you're probably too far away. And even this is a little far. Okay, if he steps in with that punch, boom, makes it super easy. So just another side note here, anytime I can get him to come at me, closing that gap gets a lot easier. Okay? If he's just kind of standing there, throwing punches at me, I want to get him kind of coming after me. Because if we're 2 arm lengths away and he goes to wind up, that's a big gap to close, even for someone as tall as me. So if I can get him kind of chasing me here, he's coming in towards me. So we're going to meet in the middle. So really, you know, for self-defense, you should be backing up to keep that distance anyways. But if they're ever pursuing you, it makes things a lot easier. So definitely keep that in mind. So a couple angles here. If I can get him kind of chasing me, 1. Moving to T position, securing the arm, shoulder comes in, heel to toe, shooting the butt, lifting, and then I'm going to tuck. Boom. Maybe right here. If I can get him kind of chasing me, 1. Underhook. Move to T position. Secure the arm. Shoulder comes through. Heel to toe. Butt shoots deep. Lift.